My son stood up in the middle of my divorce hearing, pulled out his phone, and said he had a recording that would change everything. The judge stopped mid-sentence. My husband's face went pale, and I didn't even know what was about to play. My name is Loretta Hollins. I'm 59 years old, and I thought I'd seen every kind of pain this world could throw at a woman. Raised in Memphis by a mother who prayed more than she slept and a father I barely know, I learned early that survival meant standing on your own 2 feet. When I married Terrence 32 years ago, I believed I'd finally found someone who would stand beside me, someone who would choose me when life got hard, someone who meant the vows he took. I was wrong. The courtroom was quiet that morning, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest and makes your heartbeat sound too loud. I sat at my table with trembling hands, watching my husband of 3 decades sit across from me like I was a stranger, like I hadn't cooked his meals, raised his children, or held him through losses he couldn't face alone. His lawyer was talking, throwing accusations at me that didn't even sound real. Words like unstable and neglectful and emotionally unfit. Each word was a slap, each lie cut deeper than the last. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and tell everyone in that room who I really was. But my voice felt trapped somewhere deep inside my throat, tangled up with 32 years of loyalty, sacrifice, and love that apparently meant nothing to the man sitting 10 feet away. Then my son Deshaun stood up. He wasn't supposed to speak. He came to support me, to sit quietly in the back and just be there. But something in him snapped. I saw it in his eyes, the same fire I used to see in my own mirror before life wore me down. He walked to the front of that courtroom like he owned every inch of it. Shoulders back, jaw tight, anger radiating off him in waves. "Your Honor," he said, his voice steady but barely holding back rage, "I have evidence, real evidence, and I think everyone in this room needs to hear it." My heart stopped. Terrence shot out of his seat. "No, he can't." The judge raised her hand. "Sit down, Mr. Hollins." Deshaun connected his phone to the courtroom's audio system. His hands were shaking, but his face was set like stone. He looked at his father, my husband, and I saw something break between them in that moment. Something that could never be repaired. "This recording," Deshaun said, his voice cracking just slightly, "was taken 3 weeks ago. It's my father talking to someone, and after you hear it, you'll understand why I couldn't stay silent." The room held its breath. I didn't know what that recording was on. I didn't know what my son had been carrying alone. But as his finger hovered over the play button, I felt the air shift. Something was about to shatter. Something bigger than divorce papers or legal arguments or who got to keep the house. The truth was about to walk into that courtroom and destroy everything my husband had built on lies. Deshaun pressed play, and nothing was ever the same again. Before we start, drop your city and state in the comments below. I love knowing where my community is tuning in from. And if you enjoy these real-life stories, hit that like button and subscribe so this channel can keep growing and bringing you more truth. Also, I've poured my heart into an ebook about surviving betrayal and rebuilding your life. Link is in the description if you want to check it out. Now, let's get into this story. But let me take you back, because what happened in that courtroom didn't start that morning. It started years before, in the quiet moments I ignored, in the small changes I convinced myself didn't matter. Terrence and I met when I was 27. He walked into the hospital where I worked as a floor nurse, visiting his grandmother who'd had a stroke. He was charming in that effortless way some men are, smooth voice, easy smile, the kind of presence that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. When he asked for my number, I hesitated. I'd been hurt before. But he was persistent, without being pushy, romantic without being overwhelming. We married a year later in a small church ceremony. My mother cried happy tears. His family welcomed me with open arms. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged to something bigger than myself. We had Nylene 2 years into our marriage. She was beautiful, delicate, with her father's eyes and his need for approval. Then came Deshaun 4 years later, strong-willed, observant, protective even as a child. He was my shadow, following me room to room, asking questions about everything. Life was full, exhausting, but full. Terrence worked at the automotive plant, steady hours, decent pay. I climbed my way up from floor nurse to charge nurse to supervisor. We bought a modest house in a quiet neighborhood. We took the kids to church on Sundays. We had backyard barbecues and birthday parties and family photos that looked like everything was right. But somewhere in the middle of building that life, Terrence started pulling away. It wasn't sudden. It was gradual, like watching a plant die one leaf at a time. He stopped touching me the way he used to. Those casual touches that said, "I see you, I choose you." His kisses became quick pecks on the cheek. His hugs felt obligatory. When I'd reach for his hand across the dinner table, he'd pull away to grab his phone. I told myself he was tired. Work was stressing him out, the kids were getting older and needed less from us, so maybe he didn't know what to do with the quiet. I made excuses for him because that's what you do when you've invested 30 decades into someone. The real shift came when my mother got sick. Cancer. Aggressive. She fought it for 8 months, and I was with her through every hospital visit, every chemo session, every late-night phone call when the pain got too bad. Terrence barely showed up. He'd drop me off at the hospice center and say he had to work. He'd make excuses about why he couldn't visit her with me. When she died, I crumbled. I took a week off work. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I'd sit in her favorite chair in our living room and cry until my ribs ached. And Terrence? He acted like my grief was an inconvenience. He'd walk past me without a word. He'd sigh heavily when I cried. He told me once, in a voice colder than I'd ever heard from him, "You need to pull yourself together, Loretta. Life doesn't stop because somebody dies." I should have left him then, but I didn't. I stayed because I'd been taught that marriage was forever. I stayed because I didn't want to be another divorce statistic. I stayed because I thought if I just held on long enough, he'd come back to me. The kids noticed. Nylene was 28 by then, living across town, engaged to a man I barely knew. She worshipped her father, always had. To her, he could do no wrong. When I tried to talk to her about how distant he'd become, she'd wave me off. "Daddy's just stressed, Mama. You're being too sensitive." Too sensitive. As if grief had an expiration date. But Deshaun saw it differently. He was 24, fresh out of college, working at a tech firm downtown. He'd come by the house every Sunday for dinner, and I could see the anger building in him every time Terrence dismissed me or spoke to me like I was invisible. One night, after Terrence had gone to bed early, again, Deshaun sat with me at the kitchen table. "Ma," he said quietly, his jaw tight, "why do you let him treat you like that?" I didn't have an answer, so I changed the subject. But Deshaun didn't forget. He started watching his father more closely, noticing things, asking questions I wasn't ready to hear. Then came the night that changed everything. I was folding laundry in the bedroom when Terrence walked in, sat on the edge of the bed, and said, "I think we need to talk." My stomach dropped. I knew that tone. "I'm not happy, Loretta," he said, not looking at me. "I haven't been for a long time." I stood there holding one of his shirts, my hands frozen mid-fold. "I want a divorce." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my knees go weak, my mouth opened, but no sound came out. He kept talking, his voice calm, rehearsed, like he'd practiced this speech in the mirror. "We've grown apart. You're focused on your career. I feel like I'm just here to pay bills and show up for holidays. This isn't a marriage anymore. It's a routine. I finally found my voice. Terrence, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. I don't want to fix it. He stood up, walked to the door, and glanced back at me with something close to pity. I already talked to a lawyer. Papers will be ready next week. Then he left the room. I sat down on the bed, still holding his shirt, and the tears came in waves I couldn't control. He'd already talked to a lawyer. He'd been planning this, and I'd been too blind to see it coming. The next morning, I called Deshawn. My voice was shaking so badly I could barely get the words out. He showed up at my door 20 minutes later, fury written all over his face. He did what? Deshawn's voice was low, dangerous. I told him everything. The coldness, the distance, the divorce. He paced my living room like a caged animal. Ma, this doesn't make sense. People don't just wake up one day and decide to throw away 32 years. Something's going on. I wanted to believe him, but part of me wondered if Terrence was right. Maybe I had focused too much on work. Maybe I hadn't been enough. Deshawn grabbed my shoulders gently, forcing me to look at him. Stop. You don't dare blame yourself for this. Whatever he's doing, it's on him, not you. I nodded, but I didn't believe it. Not yet, because I didn't know what Terrence had really been doing behind my back. I didn't know about the lies, the stolen money, the other woman. But I was about to find out.
The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. I came home from a 12-hour shift, exhausted, feet aching, and found a thick manila envelope propped against the front door. My name was typed across the front in cold, impersonal letters. Inside, the papers were brutal. Terrence wasn't just asking for a divorce. He was asking for everything. The house, half my retirement, spousal support. He claimed that because I'd been career-focused, I'd neglected the marriage and he deserved compensation for his emotional labor over the years. Emotional labor. The man who couldn't even sit with me while my mother was dying wanted to be paid for emotional labor? I sat at the kitchen table reading page after page of accusations that painted me as some cold, distant wife who cared more about work than family. It was a version of me I didn't recognize. A twisted narrative that made me the villain in a story I thought we were writing together. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the papers. I called my own lawyer the next morning. Her name was Patricia Chen, a sharp woman in her 50s who'd been recommended by a coworker. When I walked into her office and handed her the papers, she read through them with a deepening frown. "Mrs. Hollins," she said finally, setting the papers down, "has your husband had access to your financial accounts?" "We have a joint account," I said. "We've had it for years." "Why?" She tapped her pen against the desk. "Because these claims about spousal support and his financial contributions don't add up. If he's been the primary breadwinner like he's claiming, there should be records, bank statements, tax returns. I need you to pull everything, every statement from the last 5 years." I did. And that's when I found it. Money was missing. Not small amounts. Thousands of dollars. Transferred out in increments over the past 18 months, always to an account I didn't recognize. Some transfers were labeled household expenses, others just had random reference numbers. I called Patricia immediately, my voice cracking. "He's been stealing from me." "We need to document everything," she said. "Print out every statement, highlight every suspicious transaction. This changes the entire case." But Terrence wasn't done. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Nylene. "Mama," she said, her voice tight, "Daddy told me some things I need to ask you about." My chest tightened. "What things?" "He said you've been seeing someone, a man from work. He said that's why the marriage fell apart. I almost dropped the phone. Nylene? That's not true. Your father is lying. He said you've been distant for years, that you pushed him away. Mama, you know me. You know I would never... I don't know what to believe anymore. Her voice was cold, distant. Daddy's hurting, Mama, and you don't seem to care. She hung up. I sat there staring at the phone, feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under me. My own daughter believed him. She believed his lies without even asking for my side. Deshawn, on the other hand, was livid. He's lying to Nylene? Ma, this man is trying to destroy you. He's stealing your money, lying to your kids, and now he's making up affairs? We need to fight back. How? I felt so tired, so defeated. He's got Nylene on his side. He's got a lawyer who's making me sound like a monster. What am I supposed to do? Deshawn stopped pacing and looked at me with an intensity that reminded me of myself before life wore me down. We find out what he's really hiding, because men don't act like this unless they're covering something up. He was right. 2 days later, I was at the grocery store when I saw her. A woman I vaguely recognized. She worked at the same automotive plant as Terrence. I'd met her once, maybe twice, at company holiday parties. Her name was Raina. She was standing in the checkout line laughing at something on her phone, and when she looked up and saw me, her face went pale. She tried to look away, tried to pretend she hadn't seen me, but I walked right up to her. Raina, right? She nodded, her smile forced. Mrs. Hollins, hi. How are you? I'm going through a divorce, actually. I watched her face carefully. Did Terrence mention that to you? Her smile faltered. Just for a second, but I saw it. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? The words came out before I could stop them. Because you don't seem surprised. She grabbed her bags and brushed past me. I have to go. But I'd seen it. The guilt. The discomfort. She knew. That night, I told Deshawn about the encounter. He didn't say anything for a long moment, just sat there with his jaw clenched. I'm going to find out what's going on, he said finally, one way or another. Deshawn, don't do anything. Ma! He looked at me, his eyes full of a pain I wished I could take away. He's destroying you, and I'm not going to sit here and watch. The next week, the accusations got worse. Terrence's lawyer submitted a statement to the court claiming I'd been emotionally unstable since my mother's death, that I'd had outbursts at work, that I'd been neglectful of family obligations. Every word was a knife. My coworkers were confused when they found out. Loretta? Unstable? One of them said, shaking her head. That man is out of his mind. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. The court had his statement, his version of me. Then Terrence moved out. I came home one evening to find half the furniture gone. Clothes missing from the closet. The bedroom looked hollow, like a skeleton of what it used to be. He didn't even tell me he was leaving. He just left. And when I found out where he'd gone, it felt like the final betrayal. Deshawn had followed him. I didn't ask him to, but he did. And he called me late one night, his voice shaking with rage. Ma, he's living with her. What? Raina. He's living in a townhouse with her. On the east side, I watched him pull up, walk in like he owned the place, kiss her at the door. I couldn't breathe. All this time, while he was accusing me of having an affair, while he was painting me as the villain, while he was stealing my money and turning my daughter against me, he'd been with her. Ma, are you there? I'm here, I whispered. But I wasn't. Really. I was somewhere else. trying to reconcile the man I'd married with the stranger who destroyed me so completely. Deshawn's voice softened. "We're going to prove it. All of it. I promise you, Ma, the truth is going to come out." I wanted to believe him, but the court date was 3 weeks away and Terrence had already convinced everyone that I was the one who'd ruined everything. How do you fight a man who spent months building a perfect lie?
Deshawn became obsessed. Not in a reckless way, but in a focused, methodical way that reminded me of when he was younger and would spend hours putting together 1,000-piece puzzles. He wouldn't stop until every piece fit. He started tracking Terrence's movements. Not illegally, he made sure to tell me that, but carefully. He'd sit in his car outside the townhouse where Terrence was living with Raina, watching, taking notes. He pulled phone records. He combed through old credit card statements I'd saved. "Ma, look at this." He spread papers across my kitchen table one Sunday afternoon. These charges, dinners, hotel stays, jewelry, they all started 2 years ago, long before he asked for the divorce. I stared at the highlighted transactions, my stomach twisting. 2 years? He's been planning this, all of it. Deshawn's voice was hard, and I'm willing to bet Raina's been part of it from the beginning. I didn't want to believe it could go that deep, but the evidence was right there in black and white. Meanwhile, Nylene was pulling farther away from me. She'd stopped answering my calls. When I showed up at her apartment one evening, she opened the door just wide enough to talk through the crack. "Mama, I can't do this right now." "Baby, please, just listen to me. Your father is lying." "Daddy said you'd say that." Her voice was cold, robotic, like she was reading from a script. "Nylene, I am your mother. Have I ever lied to you?" She hesitated. For just a moment, I saw a doubt flicker across her face, but then she shook her head. "I need space, Mama, from both of you, until this is over." She closed the door. I stood there in the hallway, tears streaming down my face, feeling like I'd lost my daughter to a man who didn't deserve her loyalty. Deshawn was waiting in the car when I came down. He took one look at my face and knew. She didn't listen? I shook my head. He didn't say anything, just drove me home in silence, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. But he didn't give up. The next week, Deshawn did something I didn't expect. He reached out to Raina. He found her on social media, sent her a message saying he wanted to understand his father's side and that he was trying to be fair to everyone involved. She responded. They met at a coffee shop. Deshawn recorded the conversation on his phone. Legally, he assured me, because he was part of it. When he played it for me later, I felt my entire body go cold. Raina's voice, casual and unbothered. "Your dad and I have been together for almost 2 years now. I know this is hard for you, but he's finally happy. Your mom was holding him back." Deshawn's voice, calm. "Holding him back how?" "She was always working, always putting her job first. Your dad needed someone who actually saw him, you know?" "So you've been seeing him while he was still married?" A pause. Then, "It's complicated." "Sounds pretty simple to me." The recording ended there. Raina had gotten uncomfortable and left. But it was something. Proof that the affair had been going on long before the divorce. Deshawn kept digging. He found out that Terrence had opened a separate bank account 8 months ago, an account in both his and Raina's names. Money from our joint account, my money, had been funneled into it. He found receipts for furniture purchases, all delivered to Raina's address. He found text messages, screenshots from a mutual friend who worked at the plant, where Terrence joked about playing the victim to win the court's sympathy. Every new piece of evidence made me angrier and sadder, because this wasn't just betrayal. This was calculated destruction.
Terrence had been systematically dismantling my life while making sure everyone saw him as the wounded party. But Deshaun had one more card to play. "Ma," he said one evening, his voice low and serious, "I need to tell you something, and you're not gonna like it." My heart sank. "What?" "I've been recording Dad. Whenever he calls, whenever we talk, I know it's—" "Deshaun, let me finish." He looked at me, his eyes fierce. 3 weeks ago, I went to his place, told him I wanted to hear his side, that I was trying to be neutral. He let me in. Started bragging, Ma, about how he'd been moving money, how he'd convinced Nylene you were the problem, how he was going to take the house and leave you with nothing. I couldn't breathe. He said that to you? He thought I was on his side, thought I'd abandon you like Nylene did. Deshaun's jaw tightened. So I recorded it. Every word. Does he know? Not yet. He pulled out his phone, but he's going to. In court, in front of the judge, his lawyer, everyone. I should have told him not to. Should have said it was too risky, too dangerous. But I didn't. Because Terrence had taken everything from me. My money, my daughter, my dignity. And I wanted him to pay. The days leading up to the court hearing were the longest of my life. Terrence sent me smug text messages about how the judge would see through my lies. His lawyer submitted more documentation painting me as an unfit, unstable woman who'd abandoned her family for her career. Patricia, my lawyer, tried to stay optimistic. She said, "We have the financial records. We have proof of the affair. We'll be okay." But I wasn't sure. Because in my experience, men like Terrence always found a way to win. The night before the hearing, Deshaun came over. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, his phone between us. "Are you sure you want to do this?" I asked. He didn't hesitate. "He doesn't get to destroy you and walk away clean, Ma. Not while I'm still breathing." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Me too," he squeezed back. "But we're doing this together." That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The years of marriage, the slow erosion of love, the lies, the theft, the betrayal. And I wondered if when Deshaun pressed play on that recording, it would finally be enough to make people see the truth. Or if Terrence would find a way to twist even that in his favor. Morning came too fast. I put on my best dress, the navy one I'd worn to my mother's funeral. I pulled my hair back, applied lipstick with shaking hands, and tried to look like a woman who hadn't been shattered into 1,000 pieces. Deshaun picked me up at 8. He was wearing a suit, looking older than his 24 years. He said, "Ready?" I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. The courthouse was cold and impersonal. Fluorescent lights, linoleum floors, people moving through the hallways like ghosts. Terrence was already there when we arrived, sitting on a bench with Raina beside him. She had her hand on his knee. He was laughing at something she said. When he saw me, the laughter stopped. Our eyes met across the hallway. And in that moment, I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. He was afraid because he didn't know what I had, didn't know what Deshaun had uncovered. And for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. We walked into the courtroom. The judge took her seat. Terrence's lawyer stood up and began his performance, listing all the reasons why I was unfit, unstable, unworthy. And I sat there, hands folded in my lap, waiting for the moment my son would stand up and change everything.
Terrence's lawyer was good. I'll give him that. He stood at the center of the courtroom like an actor on a stage, hands gesturing, voice rising and falling at all the right moments. He talked about my obsession with work, my emotional unavailability, my refusal to prioritize family. He made me sound like a stranger to myself. Your Honor, he said, turning to face the judge, Mrs. Hollins has spent the last 32 years building a career while my client held their family together. He cooked meals, attended school events, provided emotional support, all while she climbed the corporate ladder. And now, when he's simply asking for fair compensation for his sacrifices, she's fighting him at every turn. I wanted to stand up and scream, but Patricia put a hand on my arm, a silent reminder to stay calm. The lawyer wasn't finished. Furthermore, Your Honor, we have evidence that Mrs. Hollins engaged in an extramarital affair with a co-worker, a Mr. Marcus Green. Text messages, late-night phone calls, suspicious behavior. My client tried to save the marriage despite this betrayal, but Mrs. Hollins refused counseling and continued her inappropriate relationship. My blood ran cold. Marcus Green was a nurse I'd trained 2 years ago during a CPR certification course. We'd exchanged maybe 10 text messages total, all work-related. And now, Terrence was twisting that into an affair. The judge looked at me over her glasses. Mrs. Hollins, do you have a response to these allegations? I opened my mouth, but my voice came out weak, shaky. Your Honor, I never had an affair. Marcus Green was a colleague I trained. That's all. Do you have proof? I looked at Patricia. She shuffled through papers, pulling out printed text messages between Marcus and me, work schedules, shift changes, nothing romantic, nothing inappropriate. But I could see it in the judge's eyes. Doubt. Terrence had planted the seed, and now it was growing. His lawyer smiled, sensing victory. Your Honor, my client has been devastated by this betrayal. He's asking for what he's rightfully owed. That's when Deshawn stood up. The chair scraped loud against the floor, echoing through the courtroom. Every head turned. Your Honor, his voice was steady, but I could hear the fury underneath. I have evidence, real evidence, and I think everyone in this room needs to hear it. Terrence's face drained of color. He half stood, panic flashing across his features. What? No, he can't. The judge raised her hand. Sit down, Mr. Hollins. Terrence dropped back into his seat, but his eyes were locked on Deshawn, wide with fear. The judge looked at my son. Young man, what evidence are you referring to? Deshawn pulled out his phone, holding it up for everyone to see. 3 weeks ago, I visited my father at the townhouse where he's currently living with his girlfriend, Raina Mitchell. He thought I was on his side, thought I'd abandoned my mother like my sister did. So he talked, and I recorded every word. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Terrence's lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, this is inadmissible. He doesn't have consent. Actually, Deshawn cut him off, his voice sharp. In this state, only one party needs to consent to a recording. I was part of the conversation. It's perfectly legal. The lawyer's mouth shut. The judge leaned forward, her expression unreadable. Play it. Deshawn connected his phone to the courtroom's audio system. His hands were shaking, but his face was set like stone. He pressed play. At first, there was just background noise, the sound of a door opening, footsteps, casual greetings. Then Terrence's voice came through, clear and unmistakable. Deshawn, good to see you, son. Come on in. Thanks, Dad. I wanted to talk. Get your side of things. Finally, someone who's willing to listen. Terrence sounded relieved, almost smug. Your mother's been poisoning everyone against me, but you're smart. You see through it. Deshawn's recorded voice stayed neutral. I just want to understand what happened. Mom seems really hurt. Terrence laughed, actually laughed. Your mother's always heard about something. That's her specialty, playing the victim. I felt my hands clench into fists under the table. The recording continued. So the affair allegations, are those true? About her? Terrence scoffed. Probably not, but her lawyer can't prove it didn't happen, and that's what matters. I needed something to make her look bad, you know? Level the playing field. The courtroom went dead silent. Level the playing field? Deshawn's voice, carefully controlled. Yeah, she's got her career, her reputation, all that. I needed the court to see her differently, see her as the problem. My chest tightened.
Hearing him say it out loud, hearing him admit to lying was somehow worse than discovering the truth myself. But the recording wasn't done. And the money? Mom said there's money missing from the joint account. Terrence was quiet for a moment. Then, I've been moving funds for about a year now, into an account Raina and I opened together. Your mother doesn't know about it yet, but she will soon enough. You've been stealing from her? It's not stealing if it's joint money. Terrence was defensive now. Besides, once the divorce goes through, I'm taking the house too. Gonna sell it and split the profit with Raina. Your mother won't see a dime. I heard gasps around the courtroom. Even the bailiff's eyes widened. Deshawn's voice came back, tight with barely contained rage. And Nylene? Does she know about any of this? Terrence laughed again, that same casual, careless laugh. Nylene believes whatever I tell her. Always has. I've been sending her money every month, keeps her on my side. As long as she backs me up in court, I'll keep paying. My heart shattered. He'd been paying our daughter to lie for him. The recording cut off. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Then chaos erupted. Terrence shot up from his seat. That's out of context. He tricked me. Sit down. The judge's voice cracked like a whip. Terrence sat down, but his face was red, his breathing ragged. The judge turned to Deshawn. Do you have more? Deshawn nodded. One more recording, Your Honor, a phone call between my father and Raina Mitchell from 2 weeks ago. He pressed play again. This time it was a phone conversation. Terrence's voice was quieter, more intimate. Loretta's lawyer is asking questions about the account. We need to be careful. Raina's voice, smooth and unconcerned. Baby, relax. She can't prove anything. And even if she could, by the time this goes to court, we'll already have moved most of the money. You're right. You're always right. Terrence sounded relieved. Once I get the house in my name, we're set. She'll be left with nothing. Good. That's what she deserves for holding you back all these years. They both laughed. The recording ended. I couldn't look at Terrence, couldn't stand to see his face. The judge removed her glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose. When she looked up, her eyes were blazing. Mr. Hollins, she said, her voice was ice. In my 23 years on the bench, I have seen a lot of things. But this is egregious. Terrence started to speak, but she cut him off. You have committed perjury. You have engaged in financial fraud. You have manipulated your own children, and you have stood in my courtroom and lied directly to my face. His lawyer tried to intervene. Your Honor, if we could just... No. The judge's voice was absolute. I've heard enough. This hearing is taking a very different turn. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw something like compassion in her eyes. Mrs. Hollins, I apologize that you've had to endure this process. Based on the evidence presented, I am ruling in your favor on all counts. Relief flooded through me so fast I thought I might collapse. You will retain full ownership of the marital home. All funds taken from the joint account will be returned to you with interest. Mr. Hollins will not receive spousal support. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential fraud charges. Terrence made a strangled sound. The judge wasn't finished. As for the divorce, it is granted immediately. Mrs. Hollins, you are free to leave this marriage with your dignity and your assets. She slammed her gavel. It was over.
I sat there, unable to move, unable to process what had just happened. Deshawn came over and pulled me into a hug. I felt his body shaking, heard him whisper, "It's done, Ma. You're free." I looked across the courtroom. Terrence sat slumped in his chair, his lawyer packing up papers with tight, angry movements. Raina was nowhere to be seen. She'd slipped out during the chaos. And then I saw Nylene. She was sitting in the back row, tears streaming down her face, her hands covering her mouth. Our eyes met. She mouthed 2 words. "I'm sorry." I nodded. It wasn't enough. Not yet, but it was a start. The weeks after the hearing passed in a blur. Terrence lost his job at the automotive plant when word got out about the recordings. Turns out, company policy doesn't look kindly on employees who commit fraud and manipulate coworkers into affairs. Raina disappeared the moment the scandal hit, blocked his number, moved out of the townhouse, left him with nothing but the mess he'd created. Karma, I thought, has perfect timing. The money he'd stolen was returned to my account, every cent plus interest like the judge ordered. I used some of it to pay off the house completely. The rest went into a retirement fund he couldn't touch. Patricia sent me a final bill with a handwritten note. Watching you win was worth every hour. Wishing you peace. I cried when I read it. Deshaun moved in with me for a few months. He said it was to help me adjust, but I knew the truth. He was making sure I didn't fall apart when the adrenaline wore off and reality set in. We'd sit on the porch in the evenings, drinking sweet tea, not saying much, just being. One night he asked, "Do you regret any of it? The marriage, I mean." I thought about it for a long time. "No," I said finally. "Because it gave me you and Nylene, and it taught me that I'm stronger than I ever thought I was." He squeezed my hand. Nylene came by 3 weeks after the hearing. She stood on my doorstep, looking smaller than I remembered, her eyes red and swollen. "Mama, can we talk?" I let her in. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd folded laundry the night Terrence asked for a divorce, the same table where Deshaun had spread out evidence of his father's lies. "I didn't know," Nylene said, her voice breaking. "I swear I didn't know he was lying about everything. I thought you'd really had an affair. I thought you'd pushed him away." "He paid you, Nylene." My voice was calm but firm. "He paid you to support him." She flinched. "I know, and I'm so ashamed. He told me it was just help with rent, that he wanted to make sure I was okay. I didn't realize it was to buy my loyalty." I wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to the hurt. But she was my daughter, and she was hurting too. "It's going to take time," I said, "for me to trust you again, for us to rebuild." She nodded, tears spilling over. "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes, Mama. I'm so sorry." I reached across the table and took her hand. "We'll figure it out," I said, "one day at a time." She stayed for dinner that night. It was awkward at first, but by the time dessert came around, we were laughing about something Deshaun said, and for a moment it felt like family again. Healing, I learned, doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small moments, in forgiveness offered and accepted, in laughter that breaks through pain. I went back to work a month later. My coworkers threw me a welcome back party in the break room. Balloons, cake, the whole thing. They hugged me, told me how proud they were, how strong I was. I didn't feel strong. I felt tired, scarred, changed, but I also felt free. One evening, about 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I was sitting on the porch watching the sunset when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello?" Silence, then Terrence's voice, small and broken. "Loretta." I should have hung up, should have blocked his number and moved on, but I didn't. "What do you want, Terrence?" I wanted to say I'm sorry. I laughed, bitter and sharp. "You're sorry? After everything you did?" "I know it doesn't mean anything now. I know I destroyed everything, but I need you to know I was wrong. About all of it." I closed my eyes, letting his words wash over me. Part of me wanted to yell, to scream at him for the pain, the lies, the betrayal. But another part just felt empty. "I don't forgive you," I said quietly. "I don't know if I ever will. But I'm not carrying this anger anymore, Terrence. It's yours to live with, not mine." I hung up, and for the first time in months, I felt light. Deshaun moved out eventually, back to his own place downtown, but he came by every Sunday for dinner, a tradition we both needed. Nylene started coming too, slowly, carefully, We stitched our relationship back together. It wasn't perfect. There were hard conversations, painful silences, moments when old wounds reopened. But we were trying, and that was enough. One Sunday, about 6 months after the hearing, we were all sitting around the table, me, Deshawn, and Nylene, when Nylene raised her glass. "To Mama," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Deshawn raised his glass too. "To Ma, for teaching us what real strength looks like." I looked at my children, these two people I'd brought into the world, and filled my heart swell. "To family," I said, "the real kind. The kind that fights for each other." We clinked glasses.
And in that moment, I realized something powerful. Terrence had tried to destroy me. He'd lied, stolen, manipulated, and betrayed me in every way possible. But he hadn't won, because I was still standing, still breathing, still here. And that, I thought, was the greatest victory of all. When people show you who they truly are, believe them the first time. Betrayal doesn't start with the big acts. It starts with the little lies we choose to overlook. Protect your peace, your sanity, and your spirit, even from the people you love most. And remember, the truth doesn't always come easy, but it always comes eventually. And when it does, it will set you free. Thank you for staying with me through Loretta's story. I know it was heavy. I know it hit close to home for some of you. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever felt invisible in your own life, if you've ever wondered if you were strong enough to rebuild after everything fell apart, I want you to know something. You are. You are strong enough. You are worthy enough. And you deserve people who choose you every single day. Now, I need your help to keep sharing these stories. If this story moved you, hit that like button. It helps more people find these real-life accounts and reminds them they're not alone. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story. We post new content every week. Stories of survival, justice, and redemption. Drop a comment and let me know. Have you ever had to fight for your truth? Have you ever had someone in your life who tried to rewrite your story? Share your thoughts below. This community is built on support, and your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this channel has helped you in any way, consider leaving a super thanks. It directly supports the work we do here and allows us to keep bringing you these powerful, truth-filled stories.